Between the vast expanse of the sky and the profound depths of human consciousness lies an invisible bridge. It is not made of stone, nor built of steel, but woven of light, of ancient knowledge, of the frequency of an understanding every soul once knew but the present mind has forgotten. This bridge does not merely connect two distant realms, it calls humanity to cross over and discover the wonders that have long awaited on the other side. On this side lies the world of form, of noise, of unanswered prayers. On the other side, there is a realm of order, of unity, of the sacred law operating in perfect silence. And between these two shores stands you, the soul rediscovering the path through itself. Prayer, in its deepest sense, is not a plea sent to a distant deity. It is the movement of consciousness, the flow of energy that radiates from the very center of life, where man and God are no longer separate. When you pray, you do not look upward, you look inward, not to request, but to remember, not to change what is outside, but to adjust the vibration within, to match the rhythm of the universe. For between heaven and consciousness, there is no distance, only resonance. Imagine that if there were a bridge made of energy, it would glow every time you think a complete thought, every time you feel a pure emotion, every time you give thanks without expectation. In that moment, the connection between humanity and God opens. No rituals are needed, no loud calls, only a quiet union. When the mind becomes still, all that you have ever prayed for is already here. Thus, true prayer is not an act but a state, the state in which you and God share the same breath, the same wave, the same understanding that everything has already been given. From the moment humanity first looked up to the sky, they have prayed. They prayed out of fear, out of longing, out of an instinctive knowing that there is something greater than themselves. But over time, prayer lost its original meaning. It became a ritual, an empty sound, a cry in the night from souls that had not yet realized that God was never far away. God does not wait to listen. God is the energy moving within every heartbeat, every thought, every breath. Prayer does not change God. It changes your direction, turning you back toward the universal law in motion. The science of prayer begins right there, when humanity stops seeing God as a person and begins to see him as a principle, not an emotional being, but an infinite intelligence. A principle that governs the universe without favoritism, without punishment or reward, simply responding faithfully to the frequency you emit. When you pray in fear, the universe mirrors fear. When you pray in trust, the universe mirrors trust. When you pray in gratitude, the outer world begins to unfold with that same vibration. The sacred law does not recognize religion or form. It recognizes frequency of consciousness. And the bridge between heaven and consciousness is precisely that frequency. Therefore, prayer is no longer a ritual but a science of energy and awareness. It does not require blind belief. It demands understanding. Understanding that every thought is a unit of vibration, that every emotion is a current with direction, that everything you emit becomes a cause, and that cause will return to you in a form you can perceive. Like electricity, which is impartial, prayer operates through precise law. It is the science of response, where thought, emotion, and intention become instruments of communication with the field of divine energy. Picture the mind as a river and God as the ocean. Between these two bodies of water, there are no walls, only differing waves. When you are restless, your waves grow murky and divided. When you are still, the river merges with the sea. Prayer is that stillness, unspoken, unperformed, the natural act of a soul remembering its source. And in that instant, you are no longer the one who prays. You become the prayer itself. But to reach that place requires a shift in perception. One must release the image of God as a random giver of favors. One must see prayer not as a cry of despair, but as an act of deliberate creation. Every time you breathe in calm, you are praying. Every time you see the world through eyes of love, you are praying. Every time you give thanks before seeing results, you are vibrating in harmony with God. And that bridge you thought was far away begins to appear right beneath your feet. Prayer, at its deepest level, is not to change the will of God, but to unite with Him. It is not speech directed outward, but a journey inward. When humanity realizes this, prayer becomes the science of union, where intellect and emotion, reason and faith, consciousness and God, vibrate as one. From that moment, no prayer needs to wait for an answer, for the answer is the peace that arises in the heart the very moment prayer begins. The bridge between heaven and consciousness is not somewhere distant. It lies within you, in the ability to stop, to listen, and to remember that you have never left the source of light. When this is understood, prayer ceases to be an act of hope and becomes the recognition of truth. It is no longer a call upward, but a response from deep within. Prayer becomes the communion between two parts of one being, where man and God look at each other through the mirror of stillness and realize they have always been one. And then, when the light of understanding descends, the once invisible bridge begins to reveal itself within consciousness. Each clear thought becomes a step. Each feeling of gratitude becomes an arch. Each mindful breath is a movement closer to the silent realm, where heaven and man meet. There is no need to seek further, for this bridge is the only path the soul ever needs to take, the path of returning to perfect unity, where every prayer no longer needs to be spoken, because all that is sacred has always been present in every breath you take. Human beings have long been accustomed to praying as an act of pleading. For generations, prayers have risen when something is lost, when fear overwhelms, when there seems to be nowhere else to turn. In that sigh of longing, the soul yearns to be saved, to be heard, to be answered. Yet in the deeper layers of reality, there is no one far away to listen, no one above to grant favors. There is only one law, the law of response, operating without bias, without preference, reflecting faithfully whatever your consciousness projects. Prayer, when rightly understood, is not supplication, but the alignment of the mind's vibration with the frequency of that law. When you plead, you affirm lack. When you say, "Please help me," you have already declared that you are without, that you are separated from what you desire. And the law only mirrors what is affirmed. The more you affirm lack, the more lack expands. The more you think yourself weak, the more the world sends evidence of weakness. Not because God wishes to punish, but because the law is always neutral. It functions like a mirror of consciousness. The mirror does not choose which image to reflect, it simply returns what is placed before it. And your consciousness is that mirror. Prayer, in its true sense, is not about persuading God to change His mind, but about bringing your mind back into alignment with truth. For God has never left you, has never closed any door. It is the fragmented, doubtful, fearful consciousness that creates the imagined distance between humanity and the source. Therefore, prayer is not asking for something to happen, it is the removal of every veil that made you forget that it already has. When you pray in the deep faith that goodness is real, that the good is the nature of reality itself, you are aligning your consciousness with the natural flow of the law. And when the two frequencies match, energy begins to move, form begins to shift, and life begins to respond. Seen this way, prayer is no longer an upward gesture, but an inward state. It is no longer an act born of fear, but an awareness born of understanding. When you understand that the law of the universe always moves toward harmony, you no longer beg, you begin to cooperate. You no longer say, "Please do this for me," but rather, "I allow what is right to unfold through me." In that subtle shift, your role changes. You are no longer a petitioner, but a channel. And through that channel, God moves like light through water, like electricity through a wire, unobstructed, unaltered. What makes prayer scientific is this: It has principle, order, and repeatable results when the right conditions are met. When the mind is still, when emotions are purified, when intention is clear, when faith is rightly placed, the energy of God flows naturally, not by miracle, but by law. Just as sound resonates when it strikes the right pitch, so does prayer. When you vibrate at the right frequency, the world vibrates with you. When you speak the language of gratitude, the universe replies in the language of grace. When you think in peace, everything around you begins to arrange itself in the order of peace. The difference between pleading and union lies at the starting point. Pleading begins in the consciousness of separation, believing itself small and powerless. Union begins in the awareness that God is operating through you. When consciousness changes its position, prayer changes its meaning. Words cease to be requests and become affirmations. Feelings cease to be expectations and become gratitude. Thoughts cease to waver and become stillness. And when all three levels harmonize, prayer becomes complete union. Many people say they have prayed for so long without receiving an answer. But the Lord does not know how to refuse it, only knows how to respond. If the prayer arises from doubt, the result will take the shape of doubt. If the prayer is accompanied by fear, the result will be tinted with fear. It is not that God is silent, it is that humans have not yet heard the echo of their own voice. When you pray with an open heart, not trying to control, not forcing an outcome, simply surrendering into trust, the current of the law flows freely. And miracles appear not because you have pleaded long enough, but because you have stopped resisting. Remember, prayer is the act of synchronization. It adds nothing to the universe. It only restores you to your right place within its structure. When you realize you are part of that order, there is nothing left to fight. You simply stand still in understanding that good is the essence, that every answer already exists, that the law always responds in silence and certainty. In that serenity, prayer becomes the rhythm of breath, the harmony between human consciousness and divine awareness. And then you realize prayer is no longer a separate moment in the day, but the way you live, the way you see, the way you think. Each time you love, you are praying. Each time you forgive, you are praying. Each time you are silent and know that goodness is at work, you are praying. Prayer does not occur only in words, but in the very frequency of consciousness. When the mind is aligned, every action, every breath, every glance becomes a wordless prayer sent to the center of the universe where all words are already heard. From pleading to union, this journey does not pass through distance, but through perception. When you understand, you no longer ask. When you believe, you no longer need proof. When you know, you no longer need results. For in that moment, prayer is no longer a bridge connecting you to God. It is the realization that you and God were never apart. In that instant, the law and you are one. The one who prays and the thing prayed for are no longer two. And the answer has been present since the very first breath of awakened consciousness. There is no randomness in the universe. Every movement, whether the orbit of a planet or the beating of a heart, follows order. When this order is understood, humanity no longer feels lost but begins to see itself as part of a perfect system. Prayer belongs within that system. It is not a cry into the fog, nor a vague hope that someone is listening. It is a process with principle, equation, and precise results when the conditions are met. When you pray correctly, you are activating a law not through words, but through the frequency of consciousness. And when the law operates, the outcome is inevitable. Every thought carries a vibration, every emotion holds an electric charge, every word emits a frequency. The universe does not respond to prayer through sound, but through vibration. When your mind sends out a signal of harmony, the law responds with harmony. When you send out fear, the law responds with experiences of the same nature. There is no reward or punishment, only reflection. Just as when you plant a seed, it sprouts according to its nature. You cannot sow thorns and expect roses. You cannot sow fear and expect peace. The spiritual law functions with the same precision as gravity, electricity, or the light spectrum. Prayer, when understood scientifically, is no longer an emotional act but a refined operation of consciousness. You are using your mind as an instrument of causation. Thought is the command, emotion is the energy, faith is the catalyst. When these three align toward one focus, a new field of energy is born, and that field begins to organize matter around it. This is not mysticism, it is mechanism. The outer world is only the reflection of collective and individual consciousness. When you alter the structure of thought, the structure of reality must shift. That is why a prayer issued from pure faith can change circumstances, heal the body, and open paths once thought impossible. Many believe prayer is persuading God to act. But God needs no persuasion. He established the law from the beginning, and it operates in perfect order. You cannot pray for gravity to stop pulling. You can only understand gravity in order to fly by another principle. In the same way, you cannot ask the spiritual law to change. You can only adjust your consciousness to align with it. When aligned, you rise. When misaligned, you experience resistance. True prayer is not to make God change, but to make yourself consistent with the unchanging law. That law is written in energy. It does not know words, nor require scripture. It understands the language of vibration. When you give thanks, that vibration opens. When you doubt, it contracts. When you are grateful for what you have not yet seen, the law regards it as already present for in the frequency of gratitude. Lack does not exist. This is why the most powerful prayer is not in tears but in silent trust. Not begging but affirming. Not waiting, but recognizing that the good has already been given. When you feel that truth within, the universe responds instantly, for the signal is perfect. Prayer is an exact science because it is based on cause and effect. The cause is thought, the effect is form. When thought changes in nature, form must follow. But the subtle point is this: it is not the surface thought that matters, but the deeper layer where emotion and belief reside. If your lips say, "I believe," but your heart still trembles, the law responds to the trembling vibration, not the words. The law does not hear speech, it hears energy. Therefore, prayer is the science of coherence. When thought, emotion, and word become one, the creative energy begins to move unobstructed. A scientist observes phenomena through data. A praying soul observes phenomena through awareness. Both work with law, only their instruments differ. The true prayerful being is also a scientist, for he does not believe blindly. He experiments, observes, and witnesses results. Each time he prays with a pure heart, he sees a response appear in his life. Bit by bit, faith becomes understanding. And when understanding deepens enough, prayer is no longer a practice but a natural state, like breathing, like the heartbeat. In the world of law, everything happens by vibrational degree. You cannot force a fruit to ripen when the seed has not sprouted. You cannot ignite iron in cold water. Everything requires matching conditions. So it is with prayer. You cannot pray with a restless mind and expect a clear result. First, there must be stillness. The mind must return to center. Emotions must be arranged. The breath regulated. The heart opened to goodness. When the inner frequency stabilizes, the law begins to operate, not slow, not fast, only precise. You may not see it working, but you can feel the energy moving through you, silent, subtle, exact, like the hands of a clock marking time. When prayer becomes an exact science, humanity stops projecting its emotions onto God. God is not angry, not testing, not punishing. God is the law of life, the law of intelligence, love, and order. You cannot make him change his will, but you can learn to move with him. And that is the purpose of all prayer, to lead humanity from ignorance to understanding, from supplication to cooperation, from fear to union. Remember, the spiritual law does not need faith to exist, but you need faith to perceive its operation. When you believe, you open the door. When the door opens, energy flows. When energy flows, life transforms. This is not miracle, but the natural mechanism of consciousness aligning with higher order. Once you understand this, you will no longer pray with anxiety, but with gratitude. You will no longer ask why it has not come, but quietly whisper, "It is coming." You will no longer look for signs, for you yourself have become the sign. And one day, you will realize that the science of prayer is not a formula of the mind, but a map of the soul. Each time you align consciousness, you are touching the law. Each time you give thanks, you are setting the law in motion. Each time you trust in stillness, you are activating the creative energy of the entire universe. Prayer, rightly understood, is the way the law speaks in your language, and when you listen with your heart, the answer is always precise, always timely, always complete, as if there had never been any distance between the one who prays and that which is prayed for, between humanity and God, between cause and effect. Everything you see out there is merely the projection of something happening within. Reality does not arise from circumstance, but from the consciousness that observes the circumstance. Every thought, every emotion, every deep belief is an invisible cause, and the material world is but the faithful reflection of those causes in form. Understanding this is the turning point of every spiritual journey, for you will cease trying to control the surface, cease attempting to fix others, cease arguing with events. Instead of trying to change the image in the mirror, you learn to adjust the face that is being reflected. Everything begins at the level of consciousness, and only there does true change occur. When the mind is filled with fear, reality feels confined. When the mind trusts, the world expands. It is not that the external environment shifts according to your will, but that the energy of awareness rearranges the structure of experience itself. The universe is not fixed. It is fluid, flexible, constantly responding to the frequency you emit. Like water reflecting the sky, when the sky changes color, the water follows. Thus, if life is reflecting something unwanted, turn inward. Do not ask why it happened. Ask instead, what state of consciousness within me allowed this to appear? The mind is the source of causation. It does not merely think, it broadcasts. Every thought sustained long enough, every feeling deeply experienced, becomes a signal sent into the shared energetic field of the universe. There, the law of response acts like a neutral amplifier. It does not judge you right or wrong. It simply multiplies the frequency you emit. If you live in anxiety, it multiplies anxiety. If you live in trust, it multiplies trust. This is why, in the same world, each person sees something different. The world does not change consciousness, creates its own version of it. Prayer, in its deepest meaning, is the conscious process of recreating causes. When you pray, you are not asking circumstances to change, you are replanting the seed within consciousness, choosing again the point of origin for energy. Every affirmation, every image you hold in mind, every emotion you nurture, these are all fragments of a new cause. And when the cause grows strong enough, form begins to shift, not by miracle, but by law. Not through personal power, but through harmony between you and the universal order. This explains why those who live in gratitude tend to have peaceful lives. Gratitude is not just a moral attitude, it is an energetic state. When you are grateful, you acknowledge that the good already exists, and in that acknowledgement, you activate the law of manifestation. Each time you say thank you, from the heart, you open the door for new energy to flow. Each time you complain, you close that door. There is no other secret. The world can only reflect what you continuously emphasize in your consciousness. Inner change is not about forcing yourself to think differently, but about learning to feel differently. Thought only touches the surface, but feeling is the current that truly moves energy. When you say, "I believe," yet still carry worry within, the signal you emit is the frequency of fear, not faith. When you say, "I am at peace," yet the heart still trembles, the law responds to the tremor. For the law does not hear words, it hears vibration. Thus, the process of inner change begins with stillness, with observation, and gradually aligning emotion with what you wish to experience. No forcing is needed, only allowing peace to seep into every cell. When the inner state is clear, the outer world arranges itself. Reality always responds precisely, but its response carries a delay. Just as a seed takes time to sprout, thought takes time to crystallize into events. In that interval, the unknowing assume their prayers are unanswered. But in truth, the seed is germinating. New vibrations are restructuring the circumstances around you. Your task is not to rush the bloom, but to hold your frequency steady. The more steadfast you remain, the shorter the distance between cause and effect. The more you doubt, the more you interrupt the process. That is why faith is not effort, it is the natural state of one who understands the law. Imagine consciousness as the sun and the world as a garden. Every thought you emit is a ray of light. When that light is steady, the plants grow toward it, thriving in ideal conditions. But when the light flickers bright one moment, dim the next, the garden falters, unable to adjust. So too, life only responds with stability when your inner state is consistent. The power of prayer does not lie in repetition, but in the purity of consciousness in each moment. When one understands that consciousness creates cause, one stops running from circumstances. One no longer asks, "Why did this happen?" but instead, "What is this reflecting in me?" From that point, every event becomes a mirror, every relationship a classroom, every challenge an invitation to realign the energy within. And as this process continues, one day you suddenly realize the outer world is not independent at all. It is your extended body. Each time you change a thought, the universe breathes differently. Each time you forgive, a new current of energy is released. Each time you believe, space itself expands a little more. Inner change, outer transformation, that is the immutable law. It requires no strength, only understanding. It demands no striving, only refinement. When the mind is aligned, the world self-corrects. When you are still, the waves of life settle. When you are radiant, everything around you begins to shine with the same hue. And in that moment, you understand that prayer is not wishing for something to happen, but recognizing that it is already happening from within to without, from consciousness to form, from the unseen to the seen, precise, silent, and perfect. All creation begins with an affirmation, not mere words, but a firm knowing within that what is affirmed is already real. Prayer, in its deepest meaning, is not supplication but declaration. When you affirm something with complete faith, you are planting a seed in the soil of consciousness. That seed already contains within it the complete image of what you wish to see. And like every other seed, it does not need you to pull the sprout upward. It only needs you to keep the soil fertile, the light steady, the water sufficient, and time will take care of the rest. A divine affirmation is not meant to persuade God, but to remind yourself of the law. For within the law, all that is good is real, and all that is right already exists. When you say, "I am peace," you are not trying to create peace. You are recognizing that peace is your true nature. When you say, "I am light," you are not borrowing light from elsewhere. You are dissolving the clouds that have concealed it. Prayer through affirmation is not seeking, it is awakening. It is not an act of acquiring, but an act of remembering. Every time you affirm something, consciousness begins to reshape itself. A thought repeated with strong emotion becomes a pattern. That pattern begins to attract energy, and that energy takes form. This is not magic, it is the natural mechanism of the law of creation. Thought is cause, form is effect. When you affirm, you are creating a new cause. When you hold that affirmation with unwavering faith, you are nurturing the seed. And when you persist at a certain moment, the new form will appear like a sprout breaking through the soil, silent yet unstoppable. The most important part of an affirmation is not the words, but the vibration behind them. A word without belief is merely sound moving through air. But a word spoken from the depth of conviction becomes a command to the universe. When you say, "I am guided," and you know within that it is true, you are sending a clear directive into the field of energy. That field immediately organizes circumstances around you to mirror that knowing. Thus, divine affirmation is the language of energy, not the language of grammar. It requires no eloquence, only the certainty of vibration. Once you understand this, you no longer use affirmations as mantras, but as declarations of the soul. For the soul does not say, "I want." The soul says, "I am." "I want" always looks to the future, while "I am" exists only in the present, and the law operates only in the present. When you say, "I am healthy," even if the body is weak, you are aligning with the frequency of health. When you say, "I am at peace," even in chaos, you are transmitting the vibration of harmony. The universe only knows how to respond. It does not argue with you. It merely returns what you declare to be true. Divine affirmation is the lamp that lights the night of consciousness. It does not drive darkness away, it makes darkness vanish because the light has been turned on. You do not need to fight negative thoughts. You simply replace them with affirmations of truth. Whenever fear says, "I cannot," you say, "I am supported." Whenever doubt whispers, "I am lost," you answer, "I am guided." Gradually, the old waves weaken, the new vibrations grow stronger, and eventually, you no longer need to force the words, for the affirmation becomes a natural awareness, like breathing, like the beating of your heart. Prayer through affirmation requires patience, but not the patience of waiting, the patience of trust. When you plant a seed, you do not stand over it each day asking why it has not sprouted. You know the law of growth is working. You simply water, tend, and trust that in silence, new life is forming. Likewise, when you affirm, let it live in you. Do not dig it up with doubt. Do not check for results out of fear. Let the law handle manifestation. Your part is to keep your faith intact, your vibration steady, your gratitude whole in every moment. Divine affirmation is not about changing God, but about aligning consciousness with Him. For in God, there is no limitation, no lack, no fear. When you harmonize with that state, creative energy begins to flow. You no longer need to plead, for you are vibrating with the same rhythm as the source of creation. Each affirmation is a note in the symphony of creation. When those notes are played correctly, your life becomes harmonious not by luck, but by understanding. And then you realize the miracle. Affirmation does not merely change circumstances, it changes you. From the one who pleads, you become the one who co-creates. From a consciousness of dependence, you shift to one of mastery. From fear, you move into faith. Every time you say, "I am," you carve that truth deeper into your soul, and gradually, what you speak becomes what you are. Prayer through affirmation is the art of certainty. It requires no strain, no loudness, no proof. Only the quiet voice that speaks from the stillest place within the place that knows goodness always prevails, light always exists, and God has never been absent. Each affirmation is a seed, and every seed knows how to grow. When you have sown enough seeds of truth, one day the garden of your heart will bloom, not with the flowers of distant miracles, but with the blossoms of realization that you never needed to ask for anything, because all that is sacred has always lived within the very words you speak. Since the dawn of creation, humanity has been given a gift few truly understand: the word. More than a tool for communication, speech is a stream of energy carrying consciousness into form. Every word spoken bears a command, a frequency, a direction of movement within the energetic field of the universe. When you speak, you do more than make sound. You issue instruction to matter. You teach energy how to organize itself around your life. Thus, words have never been meaningless. They are the pen that writes reality. The universe does not hear the language of grammar. It hears the language of vibration. Every word, when spoken with belief, becomes a code sent directly into the creative field. When you say, "I can't," you place limits around yourself. When you say, "I am ready," you open a doorway to possibilities never seen before. The law does not distinguish good or bad words, it only mirrors truthfully. If you speak from fear, the law reflects fear. If you speak from trust, the law reflects trust. Words, in the world of energy, are the substance that shapes reality. Prayer is the use of words as instruments of creation. Every affirmation is a brick, every emotion attached to it is the mortar, and every belief is the foundation that keeps the structure firm. When you say, "I am light," you are creating a vibrational pattern through which light can manifest in you. When you say, "I am guided," you allow the intelligence of the universe to arrange your path. When you say, "I am unworthy," you simultaneously instruct the law to construct conditions that mirror that feeling. Reality is simply your words revealed in matter. Every day, people are praying not through ritual, but through the words they speak. In many ancient wisdom traditions, it is believed that the word is the beginning of all creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Whether interpreted through religion or through the science of vibration, the meaning is the same. Sound carries the seed of creation. When consciousness joins with speech, it becomes a wave. That wave expands, touches the energetic field of the universe, and returns. Like a pebble cast into water, the ripples never vanish, they only widen until they meet their center again. Every word you speak comes back to you, perhaps in a different form, but always holding the same original frequency. To understand the power of the word is to understand the mechanism of creation itself. Many speak without realizing they are planting seeds. They tell stories of lack, repeat worries, affirm helplessness, and then wonder why life does not change. But the law forgets no word. It records every vibration, even the smallest whisper uttered in solitude. When someone continually says, "Life is hard," they do not know they are reinforcing that truth with energy. It is not that the world is against them, it is that they are using their words to hold conditions in place. Yet when they begin to speak differently, everything is unfolding. There is always a way. I am supported. New doors begin to open, not by luck, but because the frequency has changed. The power of words lies not in volume, but in awareness. A small sentence infused with high consciousness can alter the course of events. A blessing spoken from the heart can soothe another's pain. A word of forgiveness uttered in silence can release energy trapped for years. Thus, prayer need not be long, only real. A simple phrase like, "I give this to the light," is enough to open the path for the miraculous. When words are joined with faith, they become creative power needing no ritual, no proof. Notice how the world around you reflects what you most often say. If you constantly speak of lack, you live in lack. If you speak of faith, you will see faith blossom around you. Words are like raindrops where they fall. Life grows. Each day you are choosing which seeds to plant in your mind and in the minds of others. Let your words become light, not shadow, bridges, not barriers, affirmations of life, not tools of fear. For every word ever spoken never disappears, it merely waits to manifest in form. To pray through speech is to learn to speak consciously. Before you speak, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what frequency does this word carry? Is it opening or closing, freeing or binding, creating light or spreading darkness? When this awareness becomes natural, you begin to speak as a deliberate creator. Each sentence becomes a sacred affirmation. Each conversation becomes a ritual of light. You no longer speak unconsciously, but as one who lays each stone on the path toward union. And then you understand words do not only shape the world around you, they shape you. When you say, I am strong, the body responds with steadiness. When you say, I am at peace, the nervous system begins to relax. When you say, I am loved, your heart opens to receive. Words do not merely go out, they return, restructuring the energy within you. Speech is therefore a sacred act. Every word you choose is a pulse of light, a fragment of energy reshaping body and mind. The world is not created by miracles, but by words spoken with belief. A single statement, if strong enough, can destroy or rebuild a life. So speak as though you are creating alongside God, for in truth, you always are. When you understand the power of the word, you no longer use it to complain but to bless. You no longer speak from habit but from awareness. You no longer use words to affirm what you fear, but to affirm what you trust. For in the world of law, every declaration becomes form, and in the world of God, your word is life taking shape. There is something more powerful than thought, subtler than words, and more truthful than any affirmation that is emotion. Emotion is the heartbeat of the soul, the language the sacred law understands most clearly. For in the universe, what is deeply felt carries more power than what is merely thought, and the vibration emitted from emotion is the true signal that activates the law. You may say 1,000 times that you trust, but if your heart still trembles with anxiety, the law will respond to the frequency of that anxiety. For the law does not hear words, it hears the pulse of energy, and emotion is the frequency that carries that message. Every emotion you experience is a current running through consciousness, carrying both energy and direction. When you are afraid, that current contracts and blocks the flow of energy. When you are grateful, it opens and allows energy to move freely. When you love, that frequency resonates with the field of God, where all goodness already exists. Thus, prayer is not merely speech or thought. It is the total vibrational state of body, mind, and spirit. Only when these three harmonize does the law begin to operate in full. You can think of emotion as the wind. Thought is the sail, but it is the wind that moves the boat. If the sail is large but the wind is weak, the boat does not move. Likewise, when thought is correct but emotion is in turmoil, prayer cannot yet take form. It is not that God refuses to respond, but that the energy is not yet pure enough to be transmitted. Every affirmation comes alive only when it is breathed with its matching emotion. A phrase like, I am at peace, is merely words until you truly feel peace spreading through your chest. In that instant, a wave of energy is released, and the universe begins to rearrange form to match that vibration. Emotion is the lighthouse in the ocean of energy. It shows you what frequency you are sailing in. When you feel light, you are in flow. When you feel heavy, you are in resistance. The universe does not punish you for a low vibration, but it cannot transmit light into a space that is closed. Therefore, the task of the one who prays is not to suppress emotion, but to refine it. Observe it, recognize it, and gently raise its vibration through understanding and gratitude. To move from fear to acceptance, from resistance to surrender, is already to redirect the current of energy. Prayer is the act of emotion given direction. When you pray with an open and empty heart, not to control but to surrender, you are synchronizing with the sacred law. The emotion of gratitude is the strongest current among all vibrations, because it neither demands nor fears, it simply acknowledges that the good already exists. When you give thanks before seeing results, you have sent a perfect signal into the energy field, and the law can do nothing but respond to that frequency. For in the state of gratitude, you are telling the universe, all is already complete, and that becomes truth at the level of vibration. Yet not all emotions are easy to grasp. Perhaps it is the fear of abandonment, some lie buried deep in the sense of unworthiness, repeating themselves in invisible cycles that never fades. These hidden emotions are the silent causes shaping reality. When you notice you are reliving the same pattern of circumstance, but when you shine the light of awareness upon it, do not look outward. The emotion look into the underlying feeling, the frequency shifts, and reality changes accordingly. The miracle is that you do not need to destroy negative emotion. You only need to transform it. Emotion is not the enemy, it is the message. It tells you where you are vibrating within the spectrum of consciousness. When you understand this, instead of fighting fear, you embrace it with compassion. In acceptance, energy is released. Fear melts into understanding. Sadness turns into clarity. Prayer becomes the process of refining emotion, not through discipline, but through love. For love is the highest frequency, the frequency of God, the frequency of the sacred law in its purest form. Every ritual, every chant, every affirmation points to the same purpose: to awaken the emotion that matches the desired outcome. Thought sets direction, word opens the door, emotion carries the energy through. Without emotion, prayer is form. With distorted emotion, prayer loses direction. Only with pure emotion does the law activate. That is why when a person prays with a melted heart, with tears of gratitude, miracles seem to occur. Not because God chooses them specially, but because their energy has reached the precise frequency of the law. Once you begin to recognize your own vibration, life transforms. You no longer ask why something has come, you feel what it mirrors within you. You no longer blame, for you understand the universe is simply honest. You begin to converse with the law through emotion, to pray not with words but with the rhythm of the heart. Each time you feel love, you are saying to the universe, I remember. Each time you feel peace, you are saying, I have returned. And the universe responds with experiences that vibrate in that same rhythm, meeting the right people, opening the right opportunities, revealing the right answers. Emotion and vibration are the original language between humanity and God. No translation, no intermediary is needed. When your heart beats in harmony, the sacred law moves instantly. And in that moment, you realize prayer is no longer an act of reaching upward, but of entering inward deep within, where energy sings the song of its own creation. There, you no longer ask, no longer wait, no longer search. You only feel. You feel everything God in this heart is born twice. Every breath, once in consciousness, every subtle wave within your being. Nothing appears outwardly without the law no longer needs to be activated. Therefore, because you have become vision is the bridge between the unseen, a pure vibration of invisible pathway through which consciousness guides energy into form and never ends. But there are two ways of seeing: seeing with the eyes of the flesh and seeing with the eyes of the soul. The physical eyes can only perceive what already exists, while the eyes of the soul perceive what is becoming. True prayer begins when you learn to see through the latter. Vision in God is not fanciful imagination. It is the mind's ability to rise above the illusion of limitation and behold the higher plane where all good is already complete. When you pray, you are not asked to believe in what has never been, but invited to behold what already exists in the divine realm, merely waiting to be expressed. To see in God is to look upon truth beyond circumstances, to dare to declare, "It is finished," even when the outer eyes see no change. Every enlightened being prays through vision. They do not speak much, they see. They see with the heart. They perceive what others cannot, and because they see it, it becomes real. For seeing is an act of creation. When consciousness focuses and emotion harmonizes, the image within becomes a vibrational nucleus that draws the corresponding elements of the universe to assemble into reality. This is how the sacred law operates. When you hold that image firmly, the law can do nothing but organize to make it so. Imagine standing before an empty field. With the physical eyes you see only soil, grass and wind, but in the mind of the architect the house is already built. Every wall, every doorway, every contour is vivid within his awareness. He does not need to see it with his eyes, because the image is alive within. That inner picture guides the hands, the materials, and the time, bringing the house into manifestation. Prayer works in the same way. When you pray in God, you are designing the divine blueprint of your life. And when that vision becomes clear, the universe begins to construct according to it. The difference between physical sight and spiritual vision lies here. One sees what is happening, the other sees what is becoming. The one who looks only with the eyes of flesh is limited by the evidence and cause lies within awareness. They say, when you hold a clear image of the good, but the one who sees with the eyes of the soul says, and when the cause grows strong enough, the effect must appear. Faith is not blindness. Vision in God requires no strain. The vision of a consciousness is not forced imagination, but the natural state of a quieted mind. When the mind becomes still, the soul begins to reveal the image of truth. You do not create the vision, you receive it. Just as the lake does not create the sky, it only needs stillness to reflect it. When you are still, you see. When you see, you know. And when you know, it becomes. To see in God, you must release the habit of looking through fear. For fear also creates images, but they are images of limitation, lack, and separation. And the law is as faithful to those images as to any other. Therefore, vision is responsibility. You are constantly sending energetic paintings into the universe, and the universe is printing them out as your life. If you see yourself as a victim, you reinforce that reality. If you see yourself as light, light begins to appear. Vision is never neutral, it is the seed of creation. The simplest practice of vision is to learn to see the good everywhere. When you see another's success, look with the eyes of the soul and silently say, that good is flowing through me as well. When you see the sunrise, know it as a symbol of new beginnings within you. When you look at the world, look through the eyes of God, the eyes that see potential, not obstacle. Vision in God does not deny reality, it redefines it. You do not reject what is happening, you simply refuse to call it the final truth. To pray through vision is to sit quietly, close your eyes, and let the soul open the image of perfection. See yourself healed, see your loved ones in peace, see every worry dissolved. This is not fantasy, it is seeing what is real in the invisible plane. When the image becomes vivid, it imprints upon consciousness, and from that moment, every word, every action, every choice begins to move naturally toward that perfection. You no longer have to try to believe because you have seen. Vision in God is also the art of letting go after seeing. You do not cling to the image. Do not ask when it will come. Do not force it to appear in your way. You simply hold the vibration of gratitude and allow the law to complete its part. Just as a sower does not watch every hour, for he knows the seed has sprouted. When you have seen with the eyes of the soul, you only need to live in the feeling of completion, and that very feeling becomes the bridge between the unseen and the seen. One day, when form begins to change, you will not be surprised, for you have already seen it. You will only smile, knowing that this is how the law works, silent, precise, and filled with love. And then you will understand that prayer is no longer about reaching toward the future, but about looking deeply into the present, seeing what the physical eyes cannot. Vision in God is seeing that heaven is already here, not somewhere above, but within every moment you dare to believe, to see, and to live as though the good were already complete. Doubt is the shadow of consciousness, the whisper that dims the light of prayer. It is a profound understanding of how the universe ceases to function, and when faith is rightly understood, awareness creates dissolves like mist in the morning sun. Most people pray with hearts full of desire, but also while the other asks, they say, "Is it really so? Please help me." When these two currents inwardly wonder, they cancel each other out. Listening, and prayer loses this gap between words and vibration that prevents prayer's energy from connecting. The law does not punish anyone for doubt, it simply mirrors their frequency. When you send a mixed signal, the universe can only return a mixed result. Therefore, the first step to dissolve doubt is not to try harder to believe, but to understand deeper. For true faith is never blind, it is intelligent understanding. Intelligent faith arises when you know that the sacred law operates as precisely as gravity. It does not choose, it does not favor, it does not anger, it simply responds to the vibration of consciousness. When you understand this, you no longer fear that you are not good enough, not worthy, or not heard. For you know the law does not demand worthiness. It only requires alignment. And when you tune yourself, even slightly, to the frequency of the good, the law begins to move. This understanding is the foundation upon which doubt dissolves, because you no longer pray from the fear of rejection, but from the certainty that good always responds. Doubt appears when the mind forgets unity. When you think you are on one side and God on the other, you will always fear you cannot reach him. But when you remember that God is within your breath, within every heartbeat, within every clear thought, that distance disappears. And when there is no distance, doubt has nowhere to cling. Prayer then ceases to be a request sent outward and becomes communion. You no longer strive to be heard, you simply listen. You do not need to shout for the universe's attention. Temporary emptiness arises. You need only be still enough to hear the void. It is the space from which new faith is born. Doubt is also a sign no longer based on ready to ascend, but on higher understanding. Just as the seed must crack for the sprout to emerge, consciousness must break through its old concepts for true light to shine in. Dissolving doubt is not forcing yourself to believe, but allowing truth to prove itself. When you begin to see the law at work in your life, even in the smallest things, your faith ceases to be theory and becomes living knowledge. Many think faith must be built, but in truth, it has always been present within the soul. It is the original current of energy that allows you to breathe, the same trust that lets you believe in the sun even when you do not see it at night. Faith does not come from outside, it is only veiled by doubt. When you stop trying to prove and simply return to feeling, faith reveals itself. It is not loud, not dramatic, only a quiet knowing in the heart that all things are moving in their divine order. A simple practice to dissolve doubt is to replace the question, "Will it happen?" with the affirmation, "It is happening." Instead of saying, "I don't know if this will work," say, "I know this is taking form." Instead of thinking, "I hope it comes," feel, "It has already begun." Each time you speak this way, the mind is reprogrammed. Gradually, the structure of your energy shifts from division to unity. Faith ceases to be effort and becomes natural response. Remember, time does not negate the law. If what you prayed for has not yet appeared, it does not mean it is not working. Like a seed growing beneath the soil, you cannot see it, but the process continues. Doubt often arises when people measure results by the clock instead of by frequency. But the law does not follow calendars, it follows the maturation cycle of consciousness. When you hold faith in silence, you allow the law to complete its work unhindered by anxiety. That silent trust is the mark of intelligent faith. And sometimes, doubt dissolves only when you learn to love yourself. For behind every doubt hides a small voice whispering, "I am not worthy." But love is the antidote to doubt. When you begin to treat yourself with compassion, you raise your vibration closer